MTS documentation. There's a bunch of PDFs that are within this, or they're links to PDFs. So I was actually trying to find where they existed, but a couple of good ones. So software reference, test setup and operation, MTS data acquisition, and then FlexStack data acquisition. So the FlexStack data acquisition is this one, the one that you're looking at. So that's got the pinouts in it. So if we define the sensor as a quarter bridge, then it's going to be looking for that quarter bridge to be on pins 1 through 3, and then kind of completing things through 2. We don't have a TED sensor.
You're not going to use number 6, huh?
No.
For the positive feedback?
No. Positive feedback's up on 1. Or excuse me,
This
positive
one has
excitation.
positive excitation.
Yep.
Is 1. And then 3 is feedback.
Correct. Yep.
And then you have a negative excitation.
On 6. Yeah.
Is
but
that
we're-
2 or? Oh.
Nope. That's on 6.
So that's all internal.
Right, everything on the right-hand side is internal. So all you need to hook up to would be on the left-hand side, 1, 3, and 2.
That's a 3-wire.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a different.
Are you looking at the
It's the same.
same deal?
Oh, this is the B24.
Yep. So this is the A32 conditioner.
Oh.
Because now the B24, that's where you get the extra, I believe it's extra 2 inputs for the remote excitation sense. Whereas here we're not doing a remote excitation sense. Which I think matters.
Oh, yeah, that's way easier. What's that number 2 say?
So number 2, on the right-hand side, we're doing resistor compensation or shunting. So this is all of our internal shunt circuitry. So our shunt resistor on the front panel is hooked up, as well as our potential completion resistor, depending on
It
what
has all.
configuration.
It has all of those internally.
It's got a 120 to 350. There's an open socket in there, which has to be defined on at time of order if you're doing a custom completion resistor need.
And then this one is the one that's on the exterior.
Right,
On
the
the-
shunt panel, or the shunt resistor on the front cover. Yep.
And we can switch those out to a 120 if we need to. The one in the front.
The one on the front,
There's nothing in there now.
well,
right?
the one on the front is a 54 kilo ohm or something along those lines. 54.9 kilo ohm for inducing an appropriate range of strain based on a assumed, I think, 350 ohm resistor, or 350 ohm gauge resistance, I believe is what it is.
So we can switch that out to something higher. If we expect high springs.
I suppose you could. Yeah. I think typically it's used more for if you got a 120. I don't know how they chose 54.9K. My guess is it's
Something on the higher limit, hopefully.
yeah.
Okay.
I would assume it's something on the higher limit. But if you were to do like a 120 ohm gauge, you probably would have an appropriate resistance to again put an appropriate amount of strain into the circuit. Yeah. And then that last one's typically used for if somebody knew they were going to do 1,000 ohm or something like that, then we would set up completion resistors for 1,000 ohm internal for all the channels, and then you would have that option in the software, and then you'd probably also have an appropriate shunt resistor on the front too.
Could we set that up here on our end, or we have to like send it?
No, that would be from the
Directly
manufacturer
from-
side. Yeah. So that's quarter bridge pinout for the A32. It'll tell you here what everything is supposed to be. So we're only doing 1, 2, and 3, and then if you had TEDs, it would be hooked up to 4 and 5. And then half bridge, 1, 3, now we're using 6 and 2. So all that information's in here. Full bridge, here's where you're at. Typically though, it's quarter bridge per channel. Unless, you know, this would be like a typical load cell setup. And then if you're doing just voltage connections, we're looking at input on 8, and then ground and common on 7.
I think that's got an LVDT
It should,
there
yep.
also,
Yep.
where
think.
it needs to put some power out to it.
Let's-
Maybe like the full name, like linear variable.
Well, but I'm also wondering, I think this is only DC conditioning and DC excitation, so I don't know if an LVDT is, I don't think an LVDT is part of the conditioning capability. Because you need a AC excitation and then demodulation.
External
Right.
power supply.
Right, right.
Otherwise, it's just the same, it's probably the same input as the quarter bridge.
Well,
The feedback.
but, so when you say, when I think LVDT, I think, moving core, but it's an AC transducer. I think you need external conditioning to bring that into DC, not just AC excitation, but also specific pulse processing. Because is it amplitude modulation that you get out of that? You have to do some phase correction. Because I think it's amplitude of the AC signal that you get back is proportional to your displacement.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, our LVDTs might be dual, I think they might be AC or DC excitation, or power. That power supply, is that DC back there?
Does it have like onboard conditioning?
Not the LVDTs, no.
But it's a DC supply.
I can't remember.
AC to DC, so it's a DC supply.
That's what's powering, what was powering our LVDTs.
So we got DC LVDs. Should I go pull one?
No, we'll figure it out. Because most of the stuff that we have are just regular string pots, spring pots. They're accurate, but they're just little swipers that go across.
Yep.
Not gonna potentiometers.
Yeah. That's a question of my head still. And part of me says that the LVDT piece, so when we created a new sensor, the LVDT was in the list of sensors for drop downs. My gut feel is that that's there as a remnant of what's shared between FlexTest hardware and FlexDAC hardware. Because the list isn't necessarily pared down just to what's capable here. So typically, if you have that and you're hooked in, then it would be able to see the conditioning off of the FlexDAC or FlexTest, and then pull in LVDT.
The other point is that the Temposonics, are those AC or DC? I thought we had one, but it doesn't matter because we have dual
But
ducts.
those are logic. I mean, that's a digital signal after internal. Isn't it conditioned within the head?
I've never seen one. They're all internal. I don't know what's going on
Oh.
inside there. But we have those going into the 60 controller in the FS. S or the SE, but they're going into the dual juts, and we can control them with AC or DC.
Well, we can always take a look at the HWI file and see what those are configured as. Also, the spec sheet would be something to dig into on those to see what they are. I've only configured a few. I thought the Temposonics that I've dealt with, I thought have been digital. As far as, I don't think I pulled them into ducts. I thought they had to go into specific, like a logic level digital input.
I'm talking about the ones that are on the actuators, the MTS actuators,
Yeah,
the LVDTs, the internal ones.
but there's LVDTs and then there's Temposonics, because a different type of.
And are the Temposonics AC or DC?
I thought they. Well, thing is, they're. Isn't it? It's working on like a magneto-restrictive principle.
I think so, yeah.
So I think that's its own. I don't even know if that's AC at that point. It's sending out a pulse and recording the amount of time that it takes for the reflective response to get back, I think, and then determining distance based on that. But I think there the conditioner is within the head, and maybe that might be such that you could have an AC, you could have a DC, you could have a digital from the head, depending on what model you have.
Okay.
But maybe that's a question. All right, so this gives us the basics
Yeah, that makes more sense.
up to voltage, yeah. And then, yeah, I guess make sure we're looking at the A32 model. And then, but this does bring up a good point as far as documentation. So the documentation that's here most should be applicable, but just keep in mind, so AeroPro software reference, AeroPro test setup and operation, these will have a heavy amount of information there relating to control channels and setup that you'll just have to ignore or bypass. That won't be, because if we're DAC only, you won't have the capability for control from here because we're not interconnected. And then MTS data acquisition, I think this one might be closely tied. Yeah, so this MTS data acquisition one, I think I was looking at this a fair amount before I showed up here. This one's fairly good because I think this is particularly tied to just data acquisition. So the contents, AeroPro data acquisition test setup, sensor objects, adding sensors, creating data acquisition channels. Here we're not doing anything with data server, and then load the test, calibrate the inputs, set up recorders, create data file folder, create command strips for enable, disable, set up event actions. That's basically what we're running through for your purposes of use. So this manual might be a good one to reference back to, and all that stuff's installed on here. All right, so let's give it a shot for seeing if we can do some enable, disable. I'll give you a quick overview on data displays, and then I can see about getting data out, and then we can, at that point, probably break for lunch, and then after lunch, I'll get your hands on, I'll stop touching the mouse, run through exercises, run through questions, dig into specifics for various sensors and whatnot. So as far as data acquisition, now AeroPro, unlike MPT, I'm not going to go in and select what channels, what sensors, all of that, or individual signals that I want to record. AeroPro is going to assume I want everything all the time at whatever rate I've told it to do, and then we go back after the fact and then filter that stuff out. So as long as you set up your rates as you like them to, pretty much the next thing is enable acquisition and go. So enable acquisition is right now the enable and disable in the upper left. I only have this top bar if my test is loaded. Keep that in mind. This won't exist until I'm loaded. So if I hit the enable button, it'll blink for a little bit, and then let's see, verification issues, and get rid of the verification. It'll say acquisition enabled. It tells me when it enabled, and right now we're currently taking data. Doesn't look like anything fancy. It's taking data behind the scenes. We could see whatever our inputs are right now if we pull up a.
Is there a graph triggered, or does it automatically just pop up, or?
For scopes,
Yeah.
you have to set up the scopes. So there's the two different scopes here. This data viewer is like the instance of the data viewer. It's kind of like pulling up an individual scope on 793, but it's not going to save any configuration you have in it. So it's blank right now.
You said that there was an app that you pull up that you can configure, and then it's always up,
Right.
and it
Yep.
doesn't disappear each time you
And you
stop.
can pull up your settings. Yeah, yeah. So here, let's just add in data acquisition channels. Let's put each of the 4 strain gauges. Or I guess I put data acquisition channels. Each of the 4 strain gauges, and put those are the same. Say okay. And this stuff will take a little bit of getting used to as well. There's lots of settings within the plots. So I want to see all 4 of them. I want a longer buffer length.
I assume you can set it up so, say you run one test and you're looking at one channel and you want to run another test, can you overlay one run on top of the next run on top of the next run?
From run to run, no. You need to do that externally. When you say like if a previous acquisition to the current acquisition,
Yeah. Say you have a graph, or what do you call a scope, and you have this saved, and you want to keep that up for the next run, with the same channel, and you just wanted to overlay this one with the new one, so you can kind of see any trends that are differing from one run to the next. So is that 4 different channels it's reading?
Four different channels currently, yeah, so it's these 4 here. I don't think you'll be able to do one run to the next. You may be able to do separate data viewers, so separate scopes, and then have one run, the next run, but not necessarily overlay it.
Or another thing, let's say we have numerical predictions of force versus displacement. Can we upload it there and then overlay the data that we're...
There is an option for predictions in the data display. I haven't used it yet. We can take a look. Let's see. So this is just like the individual scope. I'll open up the data viewer and then we can take a look and see the
yeah.
prediction option. So the data viewer looks much like data display looks much like the data viewer. You have a bunch of options here. So while the test is running, I can connect to a runtime data server or the server PC that's actually running right now. If I was done with the test, I can go back and look at the test data file that I created from that test. Otherwise, I can look at a lot of other information, trend monitoring. A lot of this probably isn't very applicable, so the ones that are going to be important are going to be look at what's happening right now, connect to a runtime data server, and then open a post-test data file. That's going to be after I'm done. So let's take a look at the runtime data server piece. Now it's going to ask me what server to connect to. This is the AeroPro server. You won't have any other selections. And then we'll say OK. We're on test station 1. If I was running several different tests, you can tell it which one you're connected to. And now we get the blank screen. blank screen is because we haven't added anything to it yet. It's a blank workspace. Up along the top bar are your options for things. You can hover over to see individual items, so plot display, XY display, meters, list views, tables, limits displays, bar charts, range charts, stack charts, pie charts. And then you can position things, so let's just add in a plot display. It's going to make a group. I can have multiple different groups, so you can have tabs. Same or similar to what I had just done, I can go select the data acquisition channels, and then I can tell it what signals within the data acquisition channels I want to look at. I'll look at the inputs, and then let's just set this to a longer buffer time again to get more data. And I don't want to separate the signals, so I get all the signals in one chart. So this is different from 793 where I can add in whatever I want at this point, so I can add in meters. I can have a meter displaying the strain gauge input of one or more with max min information. I can have a table with all that information. You can put in bar charts, you can put whatever format. You could have auxiliary signals piped in. You can put certain strains in one group. You can add another group, have that be something else. Now I can save this as a workspace and recall it later if I spent a lot of time configuring all of those pieces so that you can kind of save yourself a little bit of time.
And you can also plot one versus the other, right?
Yep, so you
Okay.
can, that would be, say, an XY plot. And here you can have, let's see, not quite sure, we don't really have.
Well, not for strain gauges, but maybe for different, yeah.
For something else,
Yeah.
you have a primary axis and secondary axis where you'd be able to select a various signal to plot against in real time. So, okay, and then we were going to look for predictions. So, being that the data display software is its own software package, it's kind of AeroPro and then data display. There's a help file for data display. Well, there's the help information here, and there's the PDF, which will have, I think, very different information than what's in the help file here. But let's just take a targeted search for the predictions, because I know there is a way. Prediction plots, prediction monitor, I think. Because it's typically used for like a stress strain plot,
Or
stress strain.
maybe like the global response, force displacement. So we know what is the target maximum force that was predicted by the model, and then we see if it is actually the one that we're applying, if we're going over or lower.
Yep. External data file, yeah. So plots display the external data file line and the upper and lower limit lines. The prediction line crosses one of the lines. The sample receives a red point. The marker, so prediction plots is what we're looking for. Prediction plots. Let's see. Unless it's a plot type within prediction plot.
I mean, we will need to upload the data from an external source.
Yeah, right. Just trying to see if that's display options. That might be an add-on option. Entering license key allows you to perform prediction monitoring workspace option. I wonder if there's a separate, so I think that is a purchased option. Wondering if there's a separate way to display something over the top. If anything, it'd be in, say, another plot display. Yeah, I think that's a purchased option
Oh.
based on what I'm seeing here, and the fact that I don't have it on the top bar. Operation, form prediction line, new workspace window. Well, let's try that. Let's do new workspace. Close your current workspace. Yeah, that's fine. No. Prediction monitoring there. Now, prediction monitoring. Select prediction monitoring data file. So it's telling me to look for a prediction monitoring file. I just close out of the help file. I don't have a prediction monitoring file.
Is that a file that you would generate?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's
Prediction
like
analysis or something?
Yeah,
And you want to
exactly.
see that
exactly
comparing?
to what we're actually applying. Yeah.
Oh, here, let's keep trying this then. So, file new workspace, prediction monitoring. Let's just call it test. Okay. So we connect to the server, we say okay. Connect to the station, say okay. Prediction monitoring, so this prediction file not found. And then looks like I would have to add that level, so select data monitor source. Currently end level data is if you were running a control test that it would have data at particular end levels. Scan would be kind of what we're doing. But we haven't really taken any scans yet, because
Yeah.
we're only taking continuous data, so I don't know how, if and or how well this will work. Was denied due to the connection is currently in use, or feature is not licensed on this system. Okay. So features there, if you're interested, we could probably dig up more information on
Okay.
how that functions.